Welcome to today's AIX Virtual Industry Roundtable on first class and premium travel. So we're really thrilled to have such a, amazing group of people joining us today. So I just want to say a really big thank you to each of you for joining and contributing to what I'm sure will be a really fantastic discussion.
I'm Satu Dahl. I'm the editor of Inflight magazine, and we are one of the key media partners with the AIX. And I look forward to this roundtable discussion with lots of great industry experts. This roundtable focuses on first class and premium travel. We look at how in this sort of Instagram driven world, passengers expect more than ever from the premium travel experiences. And we will explore how first class and premium travel has evolved and where it's heading in the coming years, especially when it comes to comfort, privacy, and luxury, and all these expectations are continuing to rise. We'll also discuss how modern design elements such as tones, lighting, seating, of course, in-flight entertainment and connectivity, and materials enhance the overall luxury passenger experience. Joining us to listen to the roundtable, please sit back and enjoy as our brilliant panel will discuss their perspectives and share insights on this very intriguing topic. And now, moving on to our excellent panel members, if you would all like to just briefly introduce yourselves and the company that you work for.
Thank you very much also for having me, for having us. So my name is Stefan Berroth. I'm a senior product manager at Recaro Aircraft Seating. And my role is basically being responsible for the business class long-range product portfolio. So definitely with the core seat definitions and the active management of our portfolio products over the complete life cycle. So happy to join this great panel round.
Thank you, Stefan. And Andy, would you like to introduce yourself next?
Hi, Satu. I'm Andy Masson. I'm the head of products and strategy at Panasonic. And similar to Stefan, we manage a portfolio of in-flight entertainment and connectivity products across our lifecycle. And we do a lot of work with Stefan's team and the other seating companies on integrating IFE into these, wonderful seats.
Thank you, Andy.
My name is Klaus Portmanns. I'm the Global Sales Director at Schott Aviation. And we are doing lighting, seat integrated lighting, seat and monuments. So we're not so much focusing on not looking into the cabin lighting, but rather on a seat lighting. And it includes reading lights, as everybody's aware of, but also more and more mood lighting, especially in business and first class seats.
Great, thank you, Klaus. And then Dan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, well, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Dan Flashman. I'm a designer, I should say creative director here at Tangerine. So I get to work with our clients, our airlines around the world, as well as seating manufacturers, creating hopefully great experiences for their passengers.
As you can see, we have a really great panel here. To start with, shall we sort of look at the reasons why there's been a rising demand for premium cabins and why, what is driving this demand? It's post-pandemic luxury travel, for example, or could be shifting passenger priorities, maybe changing demographics. What are your thoughts?
I would say, yeah, reading that, all of the above, I think. Definitely there was a bounce back after the pandemic. We all wanted to take those trips that we couldn't take. But, following on from that, I think people are seeking experiences more now than they ever have been before, and travel is a big part of that, and traveling in a premium way, not just getting somewhere, but getting in a way that is memorable is part of that. So yeah, so I think that, and also changing demographics, the rise of a middle class or the expansion of the middle class in China, in India, is bringing new consumers to the travel industry, and shifting demographics. Obviously, with aging populations, that's having an impact on travel as well.
Yeah, I very much agree with Dan. I think the expectation of the consumer has increased, especially over the last few years. I think that some of the expanding classes have certainly got a higher level of expectation as part of their travel experience. I think some of the business class and premium class tickets have become somewhat more affordable as a general percentage of the travel experience as well. And some of the incentives to travel that way are better. That's driven by the airlines. And the differential is more more favorably seen as well. For example, a business class seat today is, as good, if not better, than the first class seat of really not that long ago. It has a lie flat bed and a configuration. It has a effective entertainment system. The food is better. The experience is really good. It's interesting, when we travel business, you now increasingly are seeing leisure travel happening at the same time. And also, I think as all these populations are increasing, there is even more business travel as well. So I think at one point where we thought, business was doomed, business travel was doomed, and we're all going to be doing stuff over video conferencing, that certainly hasn't trued out. And in fact, the opposite. I think there's kind of more of an expectation and realization of the contact experience on the business side, as well as this increase on the leisure side as well, and that's good for all of us.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. I can also fully agree with Dan and Andy. So I think great that in general the aviation industry, in terms of traveling passengers, is back to the pre-pandemic level. So last year, actually, on all continents, really the travel was back, and now the industry is growing again. So that's great, and especially the premium classes, like you say, first class, business class. And I think what Andy said also is interesting. I mean, business class products, they're upgraded more and more. What used to be a first class product, kind of the same is happening to premium economy class. That used to be an early business class product. Now that's a premium class product. So there's an overall shift in terms of premiumness and comfort and luxury, which is great for the passengers in the end. They fully benefit from it. And I think you basically all mentioned the various reasons why it picked up so much. I think other industries like the aviation industry, they were flourishing back already in 22 or 23. So, I mean, business travel was back there already and faster than probably the aviation industry was growing in 22 and 23. And that helped, I think. That helped, and people wanted to enjoy the business travel, the business feel. Also, I think memberships of programs played a role. So people also wanted to maintain their status and their privileges, let's say, of traveling business class, first class. So in general, I think it's various reasons, and definitely positive that it's all picking up. Yeah.
Well, first of all, a lot have been said, which is absolutely right, and I fully agree. Maybe some additions to it. My experience is that after the pandemic or during the pandemic, people got more aware what safety means, and having more personal space means safety. So I can imagine that with the experience from the pandemic, some people tend to book premium economy instead of economy, or business instead of premium economy. And once they get used to it, they recognize what benefits each class offers, and tend to stick to these classes for traveling. And not to forget what Stefan said, I also agree that with these credit points, miles points, whatever you call it, they get from the airlines, Yeah, they're now more willing to spend those points for an upgrade, for flying in a higher class, and yeah, enjoying the comfort. So I can imagine these are some good reasons for people to book more premium class.
When we think about regions and the global market, do we see different trends and expectations? And are there disparities? Do you think they're getting larger or smaller, or is the expectation the same around the world? Yes.
Yes, yeah, we did quite a lot of research here at different regional markets and what's happening, and we've certainly noticed slightly different market forces in different regions. So, for example, in North America, which is really dominated by the big three, American, Delta, and United. They're in a little bit of an arms race at the moment in their particular field, and they're sort of normalizing for the most part. Along with Air Canada there as well, actually, you shouldn't forget them. They're very similar and a very great airline over there, and they have quite similar pushes, particularly in terms of their cabin experience when it comes to seating and in-flight entertainment activity, etc. Or most of them do. In Europe, we see that there's still a big emphasis on the low cost and ultra low cost carriers, and a different regional travel experience than you get inside the United States, as an example. The Middle East still continues to be, ultra premium, and they sort of push the market in a slightly different way. And what's great is different parts of these market drive a normalization of the products across sometimes as well. So just because something happens in the Middle East doesn't mean it's not going to show up in North America or vice versa. We're just sort of seeing different things happening at different times. I mean, Asia again has a different experience, somewhat more premium in some areas like Singapore and Japan, and then a very different experience in China as well, that's maybe a bit more towards the European edge of the market. What we are starting to see is some of the airlines recognizing, the opportunities that they have for things like ancillary revenue, as they bring products into their cabin, and opportunities for gaining more revenue from the passengers as they fly them. I think all of them are seeing the general passenger numbers go up as travel has increased, and they're all after extra lift or extra aeroplanes, and keeping aeroplanes for longer and refitting aeroplanes, etc. as well. So those are the sort of regional patterns that we, just off the top of my head, see. There's others as well, but those are probably the big four regions.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you, Andy. Stefan, how about Recaro? Do you see sort of regional variations in expectations?
Yeah, definitely. Like Andy said, also, I think there are some differences, in the different regions that we also experience and see. I think in general, if we divide between domestic travel and international travel, in Europe, typically, if you fly domestically a business class product, you don't get, let's say, a real business class product like you're used to in the US or in the Asia Pacific region. So it's rather an economy class product with a blocked middle seat, and it's sold in as a business class product. I believe simply because the flight distances are much shorter, so it's only 2 to 3 hours domestic, or let's say intra-continent travel in Europe. But if you look at the US, if you look at Asia, if you fly domestically, you already have a 5 to 6 hour flight. So in the end, the passengers, they really get to experience premiumness for a longer time, and they're willing to also, have more space and upgrade, better service, a better seating product, IFE integrated. So basically, that there's already some difference in the markets. And for example, there was just recently a good example in Asia Pacific. Also, a carrier has introduced a European business class, and the customers there, they didn't really like it. So they complained about it a lot because they expected a real business class product. And now it is kind of revamped, and they are now flying in Recaro R5 business class product. So hopefully everybody's happy in the end.
Yes.
So there are those sorts of differences. And just adding to what Andy said, segmenting the regions a little bit, from my experience or what we see currently in the Americas, that accessibility is a big topic, spaciousness of seats, how to enter it, how to work with it. So that's very important. In Europe, I think there was a strong history in innovation, layout innovation also, and we see that coming also again in terms of different layout experiences for a famous big German airline where they innovate in that respect. And fully agree also with Andy, Asia Pacific and Middle East, it's a lot of premium materials, finishes. The first impression, the first look is very important as we experience it almost day to day.
Great, thank you, Stefan. Dan, do you agree? Obviously, for working for a Tangerine.
Yes, absolutely. I was really interested in what you were saying, Andy, about the sort of normalization in these different markets around the world with different lengths of flight, and different needs, bringing in different expectations. So what becomes expected in one sector becoming the expected in another, which is it's exciting really, because it brings in new things that perhaps people weren't thinking about, which is great for elevating the customer experience. I think that's really interesting. I think also, if I can add a little, I think it's not just regions where we're getting sort of different customer expectations. I think consumers are much more brand aware these days, perhaps, than they were. Perhaps it's social media, I'm not sure. And I think they have greater knowledge of what experience to expect on different airlines, even between perhaps British Airways and Virgin Atlantic. Those consumers already have quite different expectations about what that journey is going to be like, and they're both probably doing the same route from the same airport. So
well, our business at Schott Aviation, we see clear differences in regions. So and looking at Skytrax statistics on the best airlines in the world, you see that the best airlines typically, most of, I don't know, 8 out of 10, just a guess, on the first places are coming from Middle East or Asia. So they are clearly setting the trends. And if I look at the statistics, what we deliver at Schott Aviation into the market for different programs for different airlines, we see definitely more lighting per seat in the Asia region than we see in Europe and in North America. I found it interesting. I think, Andy, you mentioned that there's a kind of balancing over time. Yes, it balances because the front runners are setting the new standards and the others have to follow, at least if they compete on the same routes. But as I said, from our perspective, the first movers are really coming from Asia, Middle East.
So when is there a particular region that pops up, if you had to choose just one, that has the sort of largest growth for first class and premium travel at the moment? If you all just chose one region, what would you say?
I mean, it's a kind of a tough question. I mean, I think we've always seen. I don't have data to mind, but I think I would talk about it in two ways. I think in volume, North America seems to have the most airplanes for the most part. I mean, you have these 3 or 4 giant carriers with huge fleets. But in terms of the premium experience, I still think the Middle East is kind of hedging it a little bit in terms of the Middle Eastern carriers, which have always managed to compete on this absolute pinnacle of quality and experience. Without naming any one of them, they all do just a wonderful, wonderful job of pushing all of us in the industry forwards about creating this absolute pinnacle based on quality and premier travel, which again has kind of raised the bar everywhere a little bit. And we are seeing some emergent markets in like India, for example, where there's just this huge population and a large emerging middle class that's pushed huge numbers of airplanes to be purchased there in the Indian airlines as well that are now sort of moving into the market, and they're pushing very quickly into the same sort of levels of experience there. So I think top of my head, I think I'd probably point to those two, kind of the North American market in terms of volume, and then the Middle Eastern market in terms of experience, certainly on the premium side.
Oh yeah, that's really hard to tell, and I agree with Andy. I mean, most of the airlines are surely flying in North America, and as I said before, I see trendsetters rather in Middle East and Asia. In terms of growth, hard to say. I really don't have statistics at hand.
Dan and Stefan, would you like to share your thoughts?
I don't have absolute numbers, but I think quite excited about the growth, or I guess the number of inquiries we're getting from Asia and India. I think a lot of exciting things are happening there. I think what first and premium means different things in different parts of the world, partly because of the length of the flights and the aircraft that get used. Doing an enormous first class on the upper deck of an A380 is a different design challenge to trying to squeeze one on a 787.
For sure, yes.
And that, gives rise to different experiences and different expectations, purely geographically. But I think it's a changing space for sure.
So looking at just Airbus and Boeing forecasts, when they're forecasting, new aircrafts that should come into service, roughly, I think 40,000 in the next 20 years. The assumption is, at least from their numbers, that APAC, Asia Pacific, will be a big driver. North America and South America and China also. Europe also bigger growth, and Middle East and Africa followed. So it's really a big mix. I think in terms of first class, there's probably more, let's say, known and used in Asia Pacific, Middle East. Business class, definitely high volumes, North America, domestically, internationally. So it all has its different segments, trends. So it really depends how you measure it in the end. Yeah.
And then if you look at the actual individual traveling, how would you say the typical profile has it changed? Are we seeing a shift in age or occupations or reasons for travel when it comes to premium travel?
Well, I think what I said at the very beginning, after pandemic, I can imagine that some people tend to book a higher class to have more personal space, sometimes for safety reasons, sometimes because they made a good experience and rebook the higher classes. From my own experience, getting older, I see, or I feel that people are getting younger around me when I travel in business class. Maybe that's not true, but what I see is, let's say on average, a mid-40-year-old passenger nowadays is different than a mid-40-year-old traveler 20 years ago. They've grown up with smartphones, touch panels, and they have a different experience. And I think this is one reason why we are seeing a trend that goes like, and I think some other speakers mentioned it before. We see a trend that premium economy nowadays, the highest level of premium economy, is something that was called business some 10, 15 years ago. And the same is true for business, which is very close to, or even better than first class 10, 20 years ago. And what we see is a general trend in terms of lighting supply per seat, that it has become a standard that the premium economy seat at least has reading light. For business class seat, you see not just reading light, but also mood lighting integrated into the seat. And for first class, it is even going beyond. It's not just to have the light, but also to have a central control for all those lights. And that's what we are seeing here.
I suppose the obvious one is the shift from business to more leisure. The balance is moving across to more leisure travelers, which is really interesting for us. I think it's, to think about whose time it is. When I'm traveling for business, I want to get home as soon as possible. When I'm traveling for leisure, I want the holiday to continue. So, having that extra gin and tonic on the way back.
Yeah, good point.
And also when we are, when we're traveling for business, we probably want to travel alone, but we want to get some work done, want some privacy. When we're traveling for leisure, more likely to want to be traveling with somebody. We still want privacy, but I want to be perhaps with my wife or my family or whatever. So catering for that shift within the premium cabin is a fun design challenge.
I'm not sure about what happens currently with the premium traveler. I think I agree with the other panelists. But what I would tell you that we're doing is when we're looking at our future designs, both in terms of our systems and our software, is we're really trying to starting to think more about the late millennials, Gen Alpha and Gen Z, on how they're going to interact and integrate with the systems. Because the seats and the designers, the industrial designers and the seating companies have just done this fabulous job of packaging seats in a much more efficient way into the airplane these days. So we can continue to get so many people in premium class. But they go in those airplanes and they're in there for 10, 15, 20 years sometimes. I mean, they're really in there for quite a long time. So we're trying to design our systems now to be able to sort of go across transgenerationally how they're going to get used. And we certainly recognize that the younger generations are much more into things like multi-screen use and multi-device use on the in-flight entertainment and in-flight connectivity side. And we're trying to integrate that technology into the premium travel experience as well. So whereas previously, we would have a premium class and, it would be a premium economy seat and it would have maybe a 15-inch screen in there or a 13-inch screen. And then business class, it would have, maybe a 20-inch screen. What we're trying to do is put much larger screen real estate in there and then have the integration of things like cell phones and tablets and maybe even augmented reality in the future as part of that travel experience. Because as the generations move through, and they go through real quick, I mean, the last 5 years have gone like that. We want them. We want to have that experience to match their expectations because they're increasingly going to be the people purchasing these seats, etc. So that's the way we think about it. If it helps.
Yeah, that's a really good insight. Thank you, Andy. Stefan, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so in general, I think, let's say the typical business class traveler, we still see as very, very important, obviously, for business class and first. But definitely also see the leisure traveler coming more in premium class, but then also more and more in business class. I think also in the last years, people were, they were just, happy, they saved some money, and then there was the chance back there to travel. So also people were, willing to invest more to make that journey most comfortable and most memorable in the end. So yeah, business and leisure. So kind of we as a seating company, we need to consider both in the end. Yeah, I think Dan, you mentioned privacy is important, but sometimes also companion. I think for premium class or premium economy class, you kind of want to consider that. Yeah, you want to provide a certain privacy. For example, privacy wings are coming there. You have consoles, but you don't want to fully segregate passengers because probably they're traveling with a partner. So it has to find, or you need to find a good balance. Same actually also what we see in business class. There is more and more interest in companion traveling layouts. So being able to have 2 seats right next to each other, or even 4 seats. For example, the Q Suite is offering.
Yes.
So you have that flexibility. Either you decide you want your privacy, or you just, let's say, open up your suite for conversation, traveling together, even creating couple beds. I think that's definitely bringing the complexity in, but also brings the beauty of finding flexible solutions and catering for different needs.
You kind of brought us to the next point here, actually, the finer details and what passengers are really looking for when they pay for that premium class ticket. So yeah, you mentioned the privacy. Of course, there's more space, enhanced comfort as well, and personalized service is also one. So would any of you have any thoughts on this? What are the passengers really looking for? Yeah.
So I think in general, if you compare it with example airports, I mean, you have your typical waiting zones for economy class, typically directly at the gate, but you also have your business class or first class lounges basically. And I think what you get there and what you want as somebody entering the lounge, on the end entering that cabin, you want a sense of privacy, you want to experience relaxation, you want to be a little bit away from the stress and the hectic. So your journey begins kind of in a relaxed mode. And if you enter then the aircraft, that it kind of seamlessly continues. That you're greeted with the hospitality of the service crew. And if you look into the cabin, you basically want to have a spacious feel, a generous cabin, prepared well. So directly when you enter then your suite, you directly more or less feel like home. Everything is well prepared. And then I think what is then very, very important is when you get the first impression, when you sit down, when you feel the different materials, tactile experience, that in the end also, of course, everything works. The seat needs to work, the IFE needs to work, the lighting system needs to work. And I think that's the task and the challenge for all of us in that panel to work together to make that in the end an experience for the passenger, that it doesn't lead to disappointments or discomfort, but to really support comfort with all the different aspects of our industry.
Sure. I totally agree with what Stefan said, particularly I guess when you said, getting on board and feeling like home. I think, a premium purchase like this, it's not so much transactional. Where we really want to get to is an emotional connection. Do you know what I mean? We want to, really connect with the passenger and take them on a journey that's, memorable. And that involves anticipating their needs, and delivering exactly what they want. Ideally, if they want to share that journey with somebody, they can adjust the privacy so they can do that. Or they want total privacy and they don't want to be disturbed. The crew know about that. So service is hugely important. And hopefully some of the clever stuff that Andy and his team are doing can enable that service. We leveraging the personal device and the information that carries through to create seamless journeys, so that crew know what to deliver. If you're a passenger and crew can bring you the drink that your preferred flavor of drink based on previous purchasing experiences.
Indeed, yes.
That sort of experience is memorable and powerful. And I think is probably more important than the height of the divider. But it all, as you say, it all has to connect and it all has to sync. And if one of those parts isn't working or isn't delivering what the passenger is expecting, then it all falls apart. So yeah,
Indeed, yes, and yes, I agree. The personalization is a massive thing now and in the future. I think so. Andy, obviously, the Inflight entertainment and connectivity plays a massive part in this. So, would you like to share your thoughts, please?
I think Dan really has it spot on there. One of a great friend of mine, Blake Emery, who's a legend in his industry, always coins a phrase about returning people to the magic of flight. Going back to that first flight experience that we all remember when you first got on an aeroplane, and it's a whole journey experience, and wanting to psychologically and emotionally take people back to that, almost childlike experience, because it is a wonderful thing. I think there's two aspects here. I think there's the passenger consumer experience, which the expectation I think has gone much higher. I think it's gone higher because in people's homes and in people's cars and on their personal devices, the experience, the materials, everything is better now. People's cars are made of, wonderful different materials and levers and composites. They all have big screens in them. People's TV sets now have gotten increasingly bigger. It wasn't that long ago when a 32-inch television was quite big, and these days you have 77 or 85 or 100 and something inch television. So there's a bigger expectation there. There's much more content available to a passenger, a consumer. It's not just 4 channels and a couple of movies anymore. They want a whole variety of different swathes of content. Their personalization, that you talked about is absolutely true. I mean, they're catered for a more personalized market, and that has been driven again by smartphones and smart devices, where they are configuring a personalized and approach and content that is recommended to them, not just in terms of films, but all manners of content. You have increasing short form social media content. You have people doing shopping, you have map experiences, you have a whole variety of applications. And then I would say the other aspect is the owner-operator experience as well, which is the airlines have a greater expectation for product uptime. So I think Stefan was talking about, everything has to work. But that's not even a hygiene factor anymore. It's a prerequisite. We can't have stuff that's occasionally offline. We can't have seats that are shut out or IFE systems that don't work or connectivity that falls over. The expectation of a passenger is increasingly higher as the market switches towards leisure. People's expectations, are going higher, and that's pushing more and more emphasis onto the airlines, and then they're flowing that down to us as suppliers to those airlines. So, yeah, I think the whole experience has been pushed up, driven by the wider market and expectation of the consumer. And then that then pushes the airlines to push us for greater technology, greater reliability, and wonderful industrial design, which, Dan and team and the others are really, helping us push forward with how we can add product to the aeroplanes.
So there's, of course, the overall aesthetics as well, and ambience, which do play a massive part in premium passenger experience, especially. So how do you create that sense of exclusivity and sophistication? Klaus, maybe you'd like to start?
Yeah. Well, what we see is if a passenger enters an aircraft, you don't know in which situation or mood he is. So you have to be you have to take care for different passengers in different situations. One passenger comes along and just wants to relax because he has had a stressful day and just wants to relax, want to lay back, wants to continue his Netflix series on the TV. Another one is under pressure, needs to finish some work just before the meeting. Another one is traveling for leisure and tends to talk to his neighbor, maybe his companion. And the interesting task is we all have to design something that serves them all. So the premium seat can be a living room, can be a workplace, can be a restaurant seat, can be anything. And we have to take care for that. And that's quite a challenge on the one hand. And not to forget what Stefan and Andy said, at the end of the day, whatever the efforts are that we need to take, if the passenger enters the cabin, enters the seat, it must work, full stop. Mm-hmm. The expectation is there, it must work.
Any other thoughts on that? Or should we move on to sort of how we can address the challenges on board, designing for different aircraft types and sizes while wanting to maintain a consistent experience across the fleets?
It's a challenge because different aircraft are just different widths, and they go different distances. So a completely consistent experience, perhaps not, but an experience from the same imagination or from the same brush or from the same story, I think yes. So making sure that the character of the design is consistent, the flavor of the design, the tone of voice is consistent. The way the service operates and all those things seem like they're from the same. Again, yeah, it's got to be a holistic journey. So, but when you're taking that journey with that brand that you've entrusted your journey with, it meets those expectations and is what you expect, and hopefully a little bit better.
Yeah, maybe I can add a bit. What I see here in with regard to different aircraft types, more and more single-aisle aircrafts are used on long-haul flights because of the extended range they can service so far. And whereas in domestic flights, let's say in European domestic flights or just European flights, the expectations were not so high if you go into business class. Stefan said something about it with just an empty middle seat. That was all. We now recognize that the expectations is not linked to the aircraft type. So an Airbus A321 going long haul, you cannot equip them with the same seats like a domestically used same aircraft. So I would rather say instead of aircraft types, more important is really the type of travel. So if you're going long haul, there's a long haul experience on traveling, whether it's a single aisle or a wide body, nobody cares.
Yeah.
Yes,
really good point.
yeah, that's a really interesting point, actually.
I'd say one of the things that we've certainly noticed, and I don't know if it just impacts us, or maybe it impacts us slightly more, is as we try and stay on top of the technology curve on the IFE side, and that technology curve is quite rapid, and you kind of see this in consumer devices. So if you think back, 10 years, the iPad was still relatively young, and you can't run software from those old iPads on new iPads and vice versa. One of the issues or the challenges that we constantly have is how do we make sure that airlines that are picking up new equipment today, they have a similar or as similar experience on those airplanes as their more legacy airplanes. And that becomes quite a challenge for us as some of the technology increases. So, for example, the newer IFE systems with OLED screens and extremely fast computing power can run many more applications and higher grades of video than some of the older systems. But the airlines themselves don't particularly want to have a different travel experience. So that becomes a big challenge for us to see if they don't want to retrofit and increase, the capability of those older systems. How do we bring those older systems up to a technology grade that the new systems can kind of run at, if you understand? So that's kind of like a fleet differential, a challenge that we increasingly see is, particularly on the IFX side, is the technology curve is still rapid, and we're not always able to go back and make a 15 or 20-year-old system operate like a current day system.
Of course, yeah, that's actually something to consider for sure. Shall we move on to the future then of premium cabins? And there's always a question how they continue to deliver a return of investment for airlines, especially now that the premium leisure travel is growing. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, we're always looking for ways to find more space for the passenger without affecting capacity. It's the ongoing challenge to squeeze out an extra couple of inches or find a stowage drawer or something like that. But I think we might have come to I think we might have used all the square inches available on current layout, even though expectations are increasing. But I think beyond space, in terms, I think we've already sort of talked about finding, extra revenue streams within the cabin environment as experiences can get more personalized. Airlines no longer need to sell three kinds of ticket, the internet and personal devices. They can sell all sorts of configurations. So I think that's quite an interesting, tailoring experiences to be exactly what a passenger wants, no more and no less, will give more opportunities for return on investment.
So in general, I mean, interesting question, how it could be, or how premium class could still deliver, benefit. So I think compared to premium economy class, simply by differentiation and added value in the end. So I mean, premium class or premium leisure is getting more and more premium, as we also discussed earlier. But in the end, currently, it's still a recliner product, right? It's a recliner product, and it's a higher PAX density or PAX count that you have in the premium leisure, let's say, class compared to business class. And in business class or first class, you get a real bed experience. You have your privacy, your own suite, your direct dial access. The digital technologies are much more enhanced compared to premium leisure, bigger screens. Andy mentioned that the possibility to pair your personal device, for example, with the system. So for us also then to deliver for the airline additional benefit, for example, our integrated seat actuation controller in our seat, in our business class product, is, for example, able to detect any electronic, let's say, issues or issues that might come up. So it can detect any, let's say, malfunctions or maybe with power problems on an actuator or something. So it can predict if something will happen. And in the end, the airline can react really earlier and quicker before the actual seat fails. So getting that information up front. So I think that's also very important for the airlines then to have a product that can be used in service, so it's not blocked. And once it's really flying, that it can also be maintained, of course, easily. So there are certain parts like, looking at the aisle side, passengers are going through with the trolleys. There will be some marks here and there. So exchanging like bumper panels, different arm caps needs to be easy, fast, cost efficient. So that's very important. And one thing maybe we will also talk about it a bit further is that also the business class and first class cabin becomes also more efficient in terms of weights and materials that are used there. So sustainability, recycled materials is something we are more and more asked for business class. I mean, this was a topic some years ago for economy class only, more or less. But there's more and more requests. What are you doing there as manufacturer? What kind of alternative materials are you using? And that also in the end creates a benefit, ecological benefit for the airline.
Yes, sustainability is definitely, something that everybody needs to consider these days in our industry. And so would you consider this being one of the hurdles in creating premium cabins of the future, or are there any other hurdles that any of you can think of that might cause some issues or challenges?
I'll quickly jump in there. I don't think sustainability is a hurdle. I think it's an opportunity. I think it creates, a wonderful opportunity for us to explore lightweight materials and new materials, ensuring that we're thinking about the right way to impact a sustainability message, put our money where our mouth is as suppliers into the industry to make sure that we're creating a sustainable future. We've obviously, all of us have been taking weight out of our products for the last few years because it's a really big issue it's a really big issue for us in general. in terms of a product, and taking weight out makes us, more competitive and more attractive to the market. So I think that's an opportunity. I think there's also a consumer demand for it as well, especially as the younger generations come through. They're really looking at, CO2 and CO impacts, so carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide impact of ticket and travel. And, as the demand for, my part of a product, which is a screen, gets bigger and bigger and bigger, we have to then offset that by making it thinner and lighter at the same time. I mean, I'd say the other big challenge that impacts us, I think all of us at this point, is increasingly complex certification requirements driven by both the political bodies, FAA, EASA, etc., in terms of compliance, and that's it's a good challenge because it's a challenge around safety that we like, but those standards are increasingly harder to meet. Number one, and also how those challenges, how those certifications requirements are then interpreted by the OEMs, Boeing and Airbus, is making an increasing challenge about getting products onto aeroplanes, and is sort of driving us to higher technology decisions. So, for example, we went with OLED screens as opposed to LCD screens, and one of the reasons we did that was it was increasingly hard to pass head impact requirements with anything with glass in it. So we almost had to move on to a more expensive technology to help with meeting those requirements. But it had the added benefit of being much more lightweight. So, it's a very complex web we weave.
And just to build on what Andy was saying about the difficulties of, for certification, I sympathize with the people writing the certifications. It's the expectations that consumers and designers bring. What we're trying to put on an airplane. We've had a taste of hospitality in premium class, and now we want to turn planes into hotels and bring everything that they can do on board an aircraft, which for the people making sure that those aircrafts are safe brings hugely complicated challenges and ever-moving targets. So, yeah, I think getting that right is no small challenge, but it is a fun.
Absolutely.
Certification is a challenge. As you mentioned, you probably need to invest in in materials that can pass it. Also, like dress covers or leather materials, right? You need to do phlegm testing, you need to do dynamic testing, structural testing. So I think the hurdle is the investment in that. And also, I think currently for, let's say, recyclable materials, the hurdle is currently also the investment in it. Like for sustainable aviation fuel, it's currently just much more expensive. So I think it's the task of the industry to take those investments really and to push it further and make it more mass market. So it's also commercially viable, to be using recyclable materials more and more. So I think that's, as you said, it's not only a hurdle, it's also a task, or also a challenge for us to be taken.
Well, a lot has been said. Major hurdles. I also see certification rules for it in certain areas. Nevertheless, we're always looking to get products out and innovations at the edge. That's what's driving us. So we need to do that. We need to be there. In terms of sustainability, some other panelists mentioned it already. I think the biggest lever we have here is really weight. Any way that is not transported saves a lot of CO2. So this is the biggest hurdle, and I think there are lots of efforts going on in every little place which goes on board to save weight, and this is the way forward. Stefan mentioned sustainable aviation fuel. I'm not sure if this is a more European-based discussion. At least in Europe, we have the regulations already in place. And yeah, that is something. It will come up. It will come up worldwide. In some areas sooner, in some areas later. but we have to face these challenges as an industry, as an entire industry.
Absolutely. So when it comes to collaboration between airlines, designers, and other stakeholders, such as suppliers, obviously, what role do you see this collaboration playing in the future of premium air travel?
Projects, from my perspective, start, with one person sketching an idea, and then that idea grows and it snowballs, and a few more people are involved. Then an airline takes it on, or a seating manufacturer takes it on, a few more people are involved, some engineers, some people from the airline. And, by the time you get to CDR, there can be 100 people in that meeting, all with their own, personal thing that they're making sure has been got right. And lots of different needs. It's the complexity of putting these things on airplanes and making them work all the time, making them deliver on the expectations of customers, and making them maintainable, sustainable, affordable, the right weight. All these things blows my mind how complicated it is. So collaboration is absolutely key. The more collaboration, the better. The earlier it happens, the better, and the cheaper as well. So you don't make mistakes that you have to unpick and redesign and rework. So yeah, we're always trying to get as much involvement from as many stakeholders as early in the program as possible.
I'll jump in. So I think I agree with everything said, and I actually think that there's going to be even greater and more earlier collaboration in the future. So as we're now moving towards these large format curved screens, and more integrated technology into the seat and the suite, and as these certification hurdles are getting higher, the requirement for the industrial designers, the seating companies, the lighting companies, the IFE companies, the dress cover companies, or the materials vendors to collaborate earlier in that design to ensure we have a successful product is really, really important. In the past, the seat company would make a seat and they would leave a hole that we would put a screen in, and that would be it. But today we have to integrate these, some of these screens are 45 inches in the diagonal. They're very, very big, and they need to integrate in with the suite furniture in a much more integrated way. And the seat has to be angled spot on for it to feel really good. As we get rid of headphones and go to headphoneless audio, we have to have the ergonomics and the geometry of the speakers and the headrests just spot on, just right. So all that integration has to happen earlier in the journey, which means that the integration of the industrial designer with the airline and then the other vendors has to happen much earlier as well. And we have to do all of that in increasing time demands from the airlines who are wanting aeroplanes quicker. They have high demand as well. So it's actually a nice way of being more innovative, because we pick up stuff from the seating companies. We thought about putting something over here, a sensor over here, some lighting over here, product over here. It works really well, and we can integrate things like screens and lighting and sound and color and material to create this much more psychological, holistic experience for the consumer as well. So I actually think the integration is really good. It's been driven by technology and demand, and it's creating a much more better integrated product at the back end of it that's more akin to the highest end electric cars that we have today.
I think during the entire discussion, we recognize that nowadays business class seats, first class seats, they're really masterpieces of engineering, of design, and the expectation is of in terms of reliability, maintainability. So everything is absolutely high. And to get to such a high level, high quality product, you need to integrate all the involved parties. The earlier, the better. Sometimes we get involved very late, and we recognize a nightmare that, sorry, we don't have space, we don't have electricity, but we need a light in this area. And then the problem starts, and we start looking around, okay, how can we realize that? The earlier everybody is involved, the easier it is to integrate. It's still a lot of work, it's still very complicated, but yes, collaboration is absolutely key. Absolutely.
And then the final question, where do you see the first class travel going in the future?
I think people are looking for experiences, I think, more than just a seat with certain capabilities. I think it's as I've said, it's not transactional, it's emotional. And I think we've also talked about the sort of differentiated experiences and how they're different. I think airlines are going to be creating more and more differentiated experiences as passengers are selecting those experiences that meet how they want to travel to wherever they want to travel to. So I think it's about creating great backdrops for service, anticipating needs thanks to Andy's amazing technology. And I think for airlines to be able to deliver more differentiated experiences, we're going to see more flexible spaces within airplanes in premium cabins, more flexibility, both from technology and software, but also from hard product and physical products, so that passengers can choose to travel alone or travel with somebody, and more technology to facilitate great service as well, to enable crew to do the tough job they do with greater ease and anticipate needs, the users to it, for passengers to interface with the technology that's on board in a more human way. So I'm very optimistic, and also interested to see how how sustainability impacts how we travel. Will it make us, when we're making those journeys, will we want to make them more special so that we're not just getting from A to B, but having a great experience and making it worthwhile. If we're gonna burn some carbon, let's make it meaningful.
I mean, if I understand the question, like where's first class going in terms of cabin class, so the cabin class, first class, I would say it depends. It depends very much because also airlines are interpreting first class or business class sometimes very different depending on their overall brand positioning. So sometimes, first class is understood as rather an extension of a business class platform product. But then it has higher shells, maybe 60-inch shell height, larger bed, and so on. Or if we really talk about a true bespoke first class cabin where you have a separate seat, a separate couch or bed, that's completely different, and it really depends on the airline. I think in the future, both will still be important, very important. And in the end, it depends really on the segmentation that the airline wants to offer their customers, that is relevant for their passengers also, what kind of passenger profiles they have. I think there will be different directions, different shades, but overall, as you also said, that panel around the experience, the comfort, the ergonomics, the service and hospitality, that's something to really focus on in the future.
Great, thank you, Stefan. Klaus, what are your thoughts on this?
It's a difficult question. As Stefan said, first class and first class are different. And I think so are also the passengers. I mean, who's flying first class? Maybe a passenger who's used to fly business class and just wants to have a nice upgrade. So he's coming from business and upgrading into first class. Or are there other passengers who can easily afford first class and try to or consider instead flying private? And I think the needs for these two passengers are completely different. What they all have in common is a certain expectations in terms of service, and not just in the cabin, but also outside the cabin. So what I can imagine is that airlines are looking into certain services. How quickly can we get those passengers through security, through custom clearance and all that? Because that also takes a lot of time. So the overall experience, and coming back to what Dan said, I think the experience is really what is driving it, and to improve the experience, I think that's a long-term task here.
Yeah, very good points actually. And finally, Andy, what are your final thoughts on the future?
I think I'm going to answer in two ways. First of all, on first class, it's kind of interesting. Every so often we get told first class is going to go away and there's not going to be first class anymore because business is so good. And I think that's true. That's true to an extent because we have seen the business class seats get so amazing and so technological. And then all of a sudden, an airline comes out with these wonderful suites for the designers that the seating companies work on, and all of a sudden there's a small arms race around first class. So I think it kind of goes in waves for first class. It's the demise of first class and then the resurrection of first class. So I sort of feel it's going to be there for a while, especially with the ultra premium airlines who are just doing such a good job there. And it's nice to see that technology drive and technology war in the first class cabin, and I think it keeps us all on our toes. And the good thing is that those technologies then trickle down into the rest of the cabin as well, which is good. In terms of the future, we obviously tried to show this at last year's AIX with our collaboration on Collins and Meyer, where we had this large format widescreen uh, OLED monitor with a Strover curve, um, more integration of things like passenger devices like phones and tablets into those devices. I think we're going to see some technology start to disappear from the aeroplane, specifically things like AC power, because it's heavy, it's not particularly reliable, and frankly, all devices now are moving on to these USB-C sockets now as well. And that provides, lower weight for the airlines. It's more universal. I mean, it's nice that it's universal because otherwise you have to carry those silly adapters around everywhere, depending on what country you go to. So I think we're going to see some of those technologies disappear. I think we might even see some of the other technologies that we're used to in the cabin disappear and get replaced by different control methods. So things like handsets, they might start to go and be replaced with, cell phone control or other forms of control of the things like the screen and the technology. Much more integration of connectivity and entertainment systems. So they become much more smart, akin to the living room, and a much greater degree of things like comfort and well-being in the seat as well. We talked about accessibility. I think that's becoming much more of a well-needed and well-welcomed requirement into the cabin of how do we feel about handicapped or handicapable folks that are flying. But also just for general wellness of everyone flying and, wanting to eliminate things like jet lag. People feel fresher when they fly. We've already seen, both Boeing and Airbus come up with wonderful new airplanes like the 787 and A350 that lower the cabin pressure, increase the cabin pressure, sorry, that makes us all feel a bit better. Now the seats, the IFE systems, the lighting, the ambiance are all increasing as well. And we're trying to come up with new ways to make people more comfortable so they're fresher when they come off those aeroplanes. So I think all these technologies are going to come forwards. If we look at the consumer space, those are the technologies that obviously we're going to try and bring into the cabin. And I think the other companies are going to do something similar.
Yes, thank you, Andy. It's been a really brilliant discussion. I'm afraid we're running out of time here. But if there's any final quick thoughts from anyone, more than happy to for you to express that, or I can just hand back to Olivia. But thank you so much. Anybody have any final quick thoughts?
Yeah, maybe I think the topic of collaboration, I think that's a great example also here in that panel round. I think in general, the collaboration within the aviation industry is truly something unique, something very special also, where so many experts come together, passionate enthusiasts about the industry, and trying to create memorable products. And I think in the end, our business is to connect people with other people or places in the world and make their journey most comfortable, productive, relaxing, safe also, and an experience in the end. So I think it's truly great, and also participating in that panel round. And it shows very much that we can only deliver that experience together in a collaborative approach.
Absolutely. Thank you, Stefan.
I'd say a big thank you to you, Satu, for bringing us together. I love panels like this, and
Oh, yes, me too.
I agree. I think we're actually, it's a small industry, funnily enough. I mean, there's only a handful of companies that are in this industry. It's very complicated. It's far more complicated than people think or realize, putting products into aeroplanes, meeting all these requirements. It's such an exciting place to be. I love the fact that if you say you're in aerospace or commercial aerospace and you design seats or IV systems, everyone has integrated or interacted with your systems in some way. So it's always a great conversation piece at parties. So no, I enjoy the industry. I think we've got a great industry. I love the people in it. I love the industrial designers and the creativity that they're driving, the seating companies, the lighting companies, the cover companies, how it all comes together. It's the collaboration and the integration of how we make it work is exciting. So
definitely. Thank you so much. I really look forward to seeing you all in Hamburg in April. And yeah, hand back to Olivia.
Thank you. That was a really nice way to finish the panel. Thank you, Stefan and Andy. I was there behind the scenes, kind of laughing and smiling at things that were said. Thank you so much for such a productive discussion today. I hope you all enjoyed speaking and found the insights shared by each other interesting. Thank you, Satu, for chairing, and all of you for your expertise and most importantly your time today. If you do have any follow-up questions or thoughts or anything, please just let me know. I'll be in touch with you and your comms teams respectively with more info. And we'll be launching this on all platforms soon. So hopefully we can all share it and get more reach as well. So thank you so much and have a good rest of your Friday and weekend.
Thank you.
thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye.